lost it all. Back when I was just a little lost. Right now I let her motivate. Work a job and try to do it right. Listen, and I almost lost it all. Back when I was just a little lost. So now it's not too late. I won't just sit and wait. Alone by myself, I'm not just gonna sit here and wait. I won't let this decide what used to be my fate. Alone by myself, I'm not just gonna sit here and wait.
It's June 15th already. It's a Wednesday, and you're tuned into Real Talk. Thanks for making time for us. Thanks for the download. We appreciate it. Great show in store. We're going to talk some politics today. We're going to talk some mental health. We're going to take life as it comes tonight. Game 1 of the 2022 Stanley Cup Final as well.
Woo.
Who you got?
Oh, I got Tampa.
You already said Tampa.
Yeah, Tampa.
Yeah,
Three
I like-
Peters. Three Peters.
I like the call. Either way, a great team's going to win this one. Colorado v. Tampa. We'll see. Will it be Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon's first, or will it be Steven Stamkos, Andrei Vasilevsky, and Nikita Kucherov's third?
I think so. They're hungry. Pat Maroon.
That's the thing about Tampa, where we're 4 in. We haven't even mentioned Victor Hedman,
Corey Perry.
who used to be the best defenseman in the world. But
Points coming
we'll see.
back.
Yeah, Braden Point's coming back.
Yeah,
Is he coming back? The Calgary kid.
It's like a 8 out of 10 chance, they say. So,
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
It's gonna be. I just think they're too hungry. They want this three-peat. They got too many guys who want it.
You got both teams missing a pretty key centerman.
Yeah.
Right? Braden Point missing for Tampa, Nazem Kadri with his hand surgery, thumb surgery, whatever
Yeah.
it is, missing for the Avs. So we'll find out. Both of them probably set to make glorious returns in the Stanley Cup final.
I'm gonna say set in 7 too. So I think it's gonna be a hard.
I
fought
like
battle.
it.
It's
Maybe
gonna be good.
OT. Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be great? Game 7 OT to win the Cup.
Yeah.
To see who takes Lord Stanley. Speaking of Calgary, Braden Point's from there, of course. I sent you those photos. Can we put these up on the screen real quick? Just from my parents, the 2 that I sent you, the real quick ones. Do we have them? Maybe we'll get. I literally sent them to you 3 minutes ago. Remember in the Slack, and we were joking, and I said the show can't go on if we don't get these photos. And then you probably thought I was kidding, so you didn't actually download them, but I was serious. And then anyway, here's the point: we don't need them right this minute. I literally threw it at Johnny 2 minutes ago. I said, hey, if you can get these in, we'll grab them. But here's the deal: everybody down in Calgary is like, they have. I'm not talking the citizens, but they're getting crews in there. People are bringing in backhoes. Or if I start naming the construction equipment, I'll get out of my depth. I was going to say front end loaders, but I'm not sure if they're technically. They got the bulldozers going. The point is, without me trying to be cute, they're bracing for what could be another big flood. Right? This is 9 years since the last big one that you remember. Calgary, High River, Okotoks, even in Red Deer, was a big mess all over the place, and the rain just has not stopped. Check this out. These are photos. If you're listening on the podcast, describe it quickly. Memorial Memorial Drive that travels along the river. They're heading into Calgary's downtown off the Deerfoot Trail or into Kensington, depending on your perspective. This is the area, John, you remember back in 2013, the water was up to like row 13 of the Saddle Dome, and a lot of people's basements were completely underwater, and all of downtown. You remember those sort of apocalyptic type photos in Calgary? So they're building, as you can see, work crews are out right now. They're building berms in between. This is sort of like where the bike paths are, if you know Calgary well, along Memorial Drive, in preparation for what they're expecting are going to be river levels that probably will breach some of their main roads there. And as you and I mentioned yesterday, Calgary's Mayor Jody Gondek declaring a local state of emergency to free up some resources and kind of change the emergency management game a little bit. So thoughts with people down in Calgary, it could be a real mess.
Yeah, hope everyone's doing okay.
Yeah.
And the rain's not stopping here either. It's last night things were banging around and the wind was picking up. I was like, oh, it must be worse down there. So
yeah, we have some hanging baskets that like the wind was so strong.
They're gone.
Blew them right off their hooks. Yeah, they're just all over the sidewalk. And I thought, well, that's what happens when you put in all that extra effort. We wouldn't have this mess to clean up if we never would have hung them up in the first place.
This weekend, you just call Eden Landscaping.
You just call Eden Landscaping. They got you covered. Or you can go pick up your planters at Friesen Brothers. Went to Friesen last night, and I couldn't help but snap a few photos. So we're going to do sort of like, it's not really an advertisement today. It's going to be more a celebration.
You at the market.
It's going to be, I'm going to take you along with me at the market. This show happens because we have the support of partners like Bitcoin Wealth. They've been with us through episode 1. And what's this, like 412 or something like that?
We're getting close to 500.
We're
coming up in October.
We're starting to casually plan episode 500, which is going to have to be a fun one. Bitcoin, well, listen, this is great. When we first started talking to their CEO, Adam O'Brien, they said stuff like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, it can be divisive. Not everybody buys in. Not everybody understands it. He goes, yeah. He says, don't steer clear of tough questions. Don't steer clear of tough conversations. He says, we just want you to let people know. You're not telling them to buy or sell Bitcoin. Just let them know if they have questions about Bitcoin to ask us. And so that's what we've been telling you. Yesterday, Bruce Arthur, Toronto Star columnist, taking a big run at Bitcoin.
Got real.
Pretty interesting stuff. He kept it real. You can check out that interview. And then I recommend if you have any questions, you look to Benny and his team. Ask for him by name at Bitcoin Well on the sponsors page at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Getting into that time of year where there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. So later today, different options. You want to stay outside, maybe. You want to enjoy the precious time you have under the stars and under the sun of these beautiful Canadian summers. And of course, this time of year, as you know, as we approach, is it accurate to say the equinox? Am I getting out of my depth here? Summer solstice, June 21st, longest day of the year. Is it called the equinox? I should have paid more attention in high school science class, but you know what I'm talking about, the longest days of the year. Our friends in Jasper are getting really excited about their Symphony Under the Sun event. That's coming up June 28th, so we're going to talk to you about that. And then there's a big event going on in Ottawa today, recognizing the need to talk about men's mental health. And TV star, he's one of the most well-known home improvement, home renovation, and big build TV personalities in the world. Bryan Baeumler has got a huge following. He's going to join us in about half an hour to get into why he's starting to speak publicly about his mental health. We might think at first glance, well, that doesn't really have a lot to do with his TV career. And what was it? This must be something personal that prompted him, that drew him toward this opportunity where he's going to be working with politicians to impact policy in Canada and really trying to get his following and use his celebrity power to get people talking about mental health, especially during this Men's Mental Health Month. So that conversation coming up in just a little bit, part of our ongoing commitment, our ongoing conversations. Of course, it's Pride this month as well, so there's a ton happening, and we're doing our best to keep our finger on the pulse of it all. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the United Conservative Party leadership race, and now's when it's starting to heat up, right? Now is when the rumors are starting to manifest themselves. Either, yeah, it's happening, or maybe, no, it's not. All these leaders within the conservative movement coming forward and saying they essentially want to be Alberta's next premier. Now, technically, they're running for leadership of the United Conservative Party, and what would that leadership look like if they win it? The answer might be different with every candidate. Would they trigger a snap election for a new mandate? Would they try to put their stamp on the party for 9 months or so before they call an election as scheduled next year? One of the most recent candidates to declare her entrance into this race is Alberta's former transportation minister. She's the MLA out of Northeast Calgary, Rajan Sawhney, who joins us live this morning, making her Real Talk debut, as a matter of fact. It's nice to have you here on the show, and thanks for making time for us.
Hi, good morning. I'm very excited to be here, delighted to be here for the first time.
It looks like you're checking in. I don't know if it's your kitchen, but from a kitchen. You've basically been on the highway and pounding the pavement since you made your announcement Monday morning. Where are you talking to us from today?
I'm in my office in Calgary, and yes, I have been pounding the pavement, and it was a lot of fun. My launch was a highlight, I think, in my political career, but today I'm at home in the office, and I'll be doing some work from my desk.
Okay, good stuff. So people are going to have a lot of questions for you. People are trying to, in these early stages of the leadership race, get a sense of what each candidate's vision for the party looks like, and they're trying to discern the difference between you and all these other candidates. People are going to value their vote, and obviously supporters of this party are going to want to make sure that there's a second mandate. They want to make sure that you can win the next provincial election, whenever that is. What does the United Conservative Party look like under your leadership, and how might that be different than what it looks like right now?
Well, I represent the more moderate center-right candidate and sector of the party. And under my leadership, certainly, I plan to mend fences with everybody, with the doctors, the nurses, and the teachers, because I know that Albertans, including many Conservatives, are tired of the animosity and the fighting. So that is priority number one. And of course, unity within the party is very important as well. There's a diversity of perspectives within the party, and certainly we have to show respect to everybody who holds different views. And that starts with making sure that we are having honest and open discussions amongst one another. And I have great relationships with my caucus members, and I'm going to build on that. But in terms of what Alberta needs right now, some of my pillars are related to mental health. It's called the echo pandemic. We have seen across the province and across the nation that mental health supports are inadequate. People are suffering, young people are suffering, our youth are suffering, seniors as well. So this is a health issue. So that is something that I will be focused on. I'll be focused on healthcare as well, ensuring that we fill the gaps. And I did mention as well that I do want to launch a public inquiry, an independent, transparent inquiry into the COVID response. Because again, there are people all over the map on this. There are people who are saying the mandates were very, very harmful, and there are others who are saying that we didn't do enough. So I think it's time to get all the opinions and the data and the evidence on the table so Albertans can see everything openly, ask questions, and then move forward.
What would you be hoping to achieve with regards to that third-party inquiry into the COVID response? Why would it be so important to you? Is it to put the criticism to bed? Is it to determine best practice moving forward? Is it to determine even next steps in Alberta's ongoing COVID response?
Yes, all of the above. It's important for Albertans who have questions and who feel that the government has been secretive, again, on all ends of the spectrum, to have the information that they need to formulate their opinion going forward. And the results of this inquiry will also help us understand what we did right and continue doing those things in terms of policy and practice, and also get a deeper understanding of where we failed as government, as policymakers, to ensure that those mistakes are not repeated. So this is just an exercise in being honest and authentic with Albertans.
There are several leadership candidates that have declared their intent to. Now, I don't think you used the word apologize. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we talked to Leela here, who says she would apologize to healthcare workers if she was the premier, doctors and nurses. Danielle Smith says she would apologize to pastors that were jailed by Jason Kenney. That's kind of the flip side of this. When you talk about mending fences, what did that 51.4% result in this leadership review say to you with regards to the need to mend fences? And where do you start there?
Well, that 51.4% result was clearly indicative of the fact that the membership wants change. They're not happy with the current leadership, and they're not happy with a number of policy directions that this government went in. So I think in terms of mending fences, I'm looking at it from the perspective of restarting from scratch and just having a reset and a renewal. In terms of apologies, I think it's very easy to jump straight to apologies, but again, there are a variety of views on the COVID response, and that's why it's important to have this transparent exercise to really understand where the deficiencies were. And at that point, that can be addressed. That can be addressed with various stakeholders. I'm hesitant to apologize right away because I think that Albertans need more information, and I think it's important to have some of these more open discussions. I'm not, I will thank healthcare workers over and over and over again because they had a very, very difficult job during COVID. And that's what I intend to focus on, how we're going to move forward in terms of renewal and reset.
I think it's a tall order for any leader, and it's a big challenge. I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't think it is. But to keep this united Conservative Party united, I think you could say the same thing about the federal Conservative Party. Quite frankly, if you and I were sitting over tea, we could probably talk about this for 3 hours about conservative movements around the world, and in particular with this sort of political philosophy, how different priorities can greatly dictate what people would like to see from their party or from their government. And it's been really interesting. Obviously, I mean, you've been inner circle here as a cabinet minister, minister of transportation, minister of community and social services, before that. But, people, you've got some who believe that the Premier did way too much on COVID response. You got people who think that he didn't do enough. You got people that think he's not hammering hard enough on so-called, foreign interests or special interest groups taking aim at Alberta oil and gas. You got others that don't think this government's doing enough on moving forward with regards to the next generation of energy jobs and sustainable energy, et cetera, et cetera. You talk about unity. I mean, what would you do differently than the current leadership? What would you do different than Jason Kenney in an effort to bring this party back together? There's obviously factions. There's been open letters. There's been MLAs openly criticizing the leadership. A few of them have been kicked out of the party, sitting now as independents. What would you do differently?
Well, first of all, your latter comments around the diversity of opinions around the COVID response, some people felt that we did too much, some felt that we did too little. I think that exactly is the reason why I want to do this public inquiry. And you're also right. Unity is a tall order. It is challenging, but it is not impossible. And I know that because when we were first elected, you could feel that the unity was palpable in the air. And of course, things deteriorated thereafter. And ultimately, what it comes down to is respect for everybody and their opinions. It comes down to listening. And look, people have been saying that they're going to start to listen or that we need to listen more. I would say that I have always been listening, and that is just who I am. I strongly believe in collaboration and open conversation and discussion and transparency. So those qualities, I believe, are going to be very important to bring the various factions together. We were united, and at this point, we have a lot of divisions. So it's time to get back to that point where we had that same sentiment and that feeling of that we are one team. And what unites us is that we all believe in limited government. We believe in fiscal responsibility. We believe that government has a role to take care of Albertans when they are in need. These are unifying factors that we all believe in, and we just need to get back to that point.
You say you were united, and I don't disagree with you. As the first party in Alberta's history to get more than 1 million votes, you saw people from across the province coming together with one common goal, and that was to get a capital C Conservative Party elected in government again. What changed? Where was the unity lost in your assessment? You were there.
Yeah, so what I would say is that we have a very diverse and very talented caucus, and not everybody's voice was listened to properly or reflected in decision making. And I think that was the defining characteristic of when the cracks began to happen. We have a number of MLAs who spoke out about their disagreement on COVID policy, and I think they would have been able to have that behind closed doors if we had the culture of openness and a culture of allowing people to express their opinions freely and with respect. So I think that's what it came down to, is a style of leadership, a tone of leadership that was not welcoming of diverse voices within their own caucus. So that is the secret sauce to making sure that we maintain unity going forward in the future. I will be very respectful and collaborative of every single team member in my caucus and cabinet.
I'm in this political group chat that I always hint at to our audience, but I never provide details. That's the deal with the group chat, is you don't throw people under the bus. You don't identify who makes the comments. But let me tell you this is just anecdotally. Someone who's a pretty prominent political player in the province has you as their pick, as who they think would be a great pick for the next UCP leader, because this person believes you to be a moderate, and they think that you're marketable, and they think that you're savvy. Can you put her on camera so I can see her face when I'm saying all this? But at the same time, yesterday, they went, gosh, that's weird that Angela Pitt is endorsing her. Now, I'm not asking you to take a run at one of your colleagues in government or a fellow MLA out of Airdrie, but Angela Pitt's been right at the top of the list when we come to those 17 that have signed off. They're dissatisfied with the Premier's COVID response. They think he's done too much. People see Angela Pitt, I think, as like a right-wing conservative. I don't think she would disagree. That's not an insult. That's just where she is on the spectrum. How do you sort that out? How do you make sense of that for people? People are going, Angela Pitt's the first big endorsement of the Sawhney campaign. It kind of sent a mixed message, this person thought.
Well, people don't know Angela Pitt the way I know her. She was instrumental in helping me with my disability file when I was tasked to make major cuts, which I held the line on and absolutely refused to do. Angela was there right by my side, advocating for protection of disabled children and people on AISH. So that is who Angela Pitt is. And certainly we do not agree on everything, including big elements of the COVID response. But Angela and I standing there together demonstrates to Albertans what unity looks like. We are on opposite ends of the spectrum on conservatism, but yet we respect each other and we can work with each other. And when people get to know Angela, they will see that she's a very smart, competent individual who was not listened to. If she had more respect and people had engaged her a bit more behind closed doors, perhaps she wouldn't have taken a public stance. But nonetheless, that's what she wanted to do, and that's who she is. But she and I can work together very effectively, and that is indicative of the fact that I can work with anybody in our caucus. So I know it was a surprise to a lot of folks, but I just wanted to demonstrate that that's who I am, that I will engage everybody, all Albertans of all stripes, as I lead in government.
And see, this is what I think is, like, on one hand, I agree with you. I do think it's an asset to have people that are at different places on the political spectrum supporting you. I mean, if you get a real, sort of a so-called progressive conservative, and you've got a right-wing conservative, and you've got men and women and people of all ages and from different parts of the province, it's a really good look for a leadership campaign, right? And at the same time, I think that generally speaking, there's a lot of the population that'll take a look at policy, with regards to maybe how this government has approached a curriculum rewrite, maybe this government's policy on the opioid crisis, in particular things like supervised consumption services, and they'll say, sure, it's all fine and well to have conversations. We want to have them on this show all the time. It's important to have different perspectives and not to dehumanize people's perspectives, not to simply dismiss people's perspectives. But there's also, if we've learned anything over the past couple of years, a real need to stick to the evidence, to stick to evidence-based decision-making. And I think a lot of Albertans, myself included, feel like this government's gotten away from that a little bit. It's a tough line to walk, isn't it? Hearing all voices, believing that all opinions have some value, but at the same time stepping forward as a leader and say we're going to base our decisions on data and evidence. I mean, have you done that through your political career in a way that you can point to an example right now and say, hey, here's where I considered other perspectives, but here's where I made a strong decision based on what I knew was the right one?
Yes, well, I'm very much informed by data and evidence. I am an economist, and so I love looking at numbers and projections. And in fact, those skills are what helped me navigate through my portfolio in community and social services. Again, I was tasked to make some budget cuts, as were all ministers, but looking at the data and the evidence and the impact on vulnerable populations, it became very clear that that was a no-go. And so I held the line on that. And ultimately, my colleagues were very grateful. And the Premier did concede that I was right in doing so. And as we move forward, it's, data and evidence, things are always changing as well. We're always getting new information. And I know on the opioid and addictions side, I mean, I held the homelessness file, and everything is so interrelated. And COVID had a disproportionate impact on that whole situation as well. So as we're learning more and moving forward, we're going to have to be nimble in our responses. I mean, and we can't be entrenched in anything that was said in the past because, as I said, things are moving forward. And you had mentioned curriculum. We have all heard the noise around curriculum, and that is also something that I want to take a closer look at and make sure that the appropriate people are at the decision-making table, and that their voices are reflected as we move forward. And that includes teachers and professionals and other stakeholders. So data, evidence, information, emerging trends, changing trends, things that are outdated, all of those factors have to be included in decision-making. Albertans deserve that.
So are you committing to basically trash the draft curriculum in its current form? I mean, to what degree are you making a commitment there to bring people to the table?
No, I'm not going to trash the curriculum in its current form. I have worked closely with Minister LaGrange. She is a friend of mine, and I know she has excellent and great intentions to put together a great curriculum. But
Rajan, you know that like 95% of school boards have said they're not like the pushback on this curriculum is I've never seen anything like it. Like it's 90+%. That, I mean, it doesn't really matter if, with respect, Minister LaGrange has good intentions here because like the entire teaching profession says, right?
Yes, Ryan, and that's a concern for me. And that's why I need to get them to the table to understand what elements of the curriculum they find so contentious. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert. I was not happy with the social studies curriculum for sure, absolutely. But that's why I'm calling it a reset and a renewal, because I want to understand what elements are deemed trashable by teachers. It's important to get that information, and that's why I want to sit down with all appropriate stakeholders.
It's been interesting to see a couple candidates, yourself included. Actually, I don't know if these words came out of your mouth, but they came out of a supporter's mouth. Angela Pitt, in supporting you, said the last thing that we need is more of the same, right? And your colleague in cabinet, Rebecca Schultz, has said the same thing about her campaign. The last thing we need is more of the same. And people are going, well, hang on. You're cabinet minister. What do you mean the last thing we need is more of the same? You were on the inside. Like, how are we supposed to take that seriously? So what are you saying to people in response to that?
Well, I would say I was on the inside and yet not on the inside at the same time. And more of the same means, the same group and I guess organizers and people that are involved in Premier Kenney's campaign and their picks. Albertans asked for a change. 51.4% is not a mandate to lead. Absolutely not. So when you're choosing the same candidates and the same infrastructure to promote candidates, that's what I mean. We don't want more of the same, and there are certain candidates who represent that. So I was a cabinet minister, but there was also an internal cabinet called the Priorities and Implementation Cabinet Committee, and they had made most of the decisions around government policy in the last year and a half, and I wasn't a part of that. And that is an issue as well. When we are making decisions and you're in cabinet, you're in executive council, everybody should have a chance to weigh in on those decisions. So more of the same is something that Albertans said hell no to. And we need renewal and we need new faces. We need more diversity in terms of how we make decisions. And I'm not talking about ethnicity or gender, although that is very important as well. I'm talking about diversity of thought, of experience, and maybe not having lifelong politicians in place, maybe having people who have real life experience, families, children, multi-generational households. That's what I mean. We don't need more of the same that do not have those kinds of experiences and skill sets.
We're going to be talking to, Bryan Baeumler, the TV, like the TV host, the home improvement expert, the specialist. We're going to be talking about men's mental health in just a few minutes. You did touch on mental health supports, and every time we talk about resources on this show, whether it's across the country, men, women, what have you, as part of Pride, we'll have conversations about mental health supports. People typically, when they talk about the biggest barriers, aside from stigma, funding is typically, or let me say access to counseling is one of the biggest ones. What tangibly would you do? Like, what would be an example, one or two things that you would do to make mental health supports more readily available to Albertans, in particular, Albertans that aren't able to simply pay for mental health counseling?
Excellent question. Mental health supports are priority number one. How can you move forward on anything if you're not healthy? If you're not physically healthy and mentally healthy? So one thing that I would launch right away as well is a mental health strategy, a provincial framework. And that means having a very clear understanding of all the supports that are available and where those gaps are. I know a lot of work has been done already in government on this, but it has been inadequate because we know that this pandemic, the echo pandemic, has been underway for some time. And there are different demographics that need different kinds of supports for women, for seniors, for the LGBTQ2S community, for youth and children. And that mental health framework and strategy would be number one priority, while providing immediate funding right away to existing civil society groups who are doing tremendous work already. So that's where I would start. I can't believe that more folks are not talking about this, because again, if you don't have health, how can you move forward in any aspect of life? It doesn't matter if the economy is booming. It doesn't matter if commodity prices are sky high. If your children are not healthy and whole, what does anything matter? How does anything matter on that?
This probably won't come up in the Conservative leadership race in Alberta, but it will definitely come up next time there's a provincial election campaign underway. Would you allow coal exploration or mining to continue in Alberta's eastern slopes? How would you approach that? Probably the most, I would say at least one of the top three, probably the most contentious environmental story in Alberta in the last year and a half. Would you agree? How would you handle it?
I would agree. Very contentious, very controversial, needlessly so. I was not happy about the policy changes that were brought forward, but Minister Savage has done a great job in having consultation. She had a great chair, Mr. Ron Wallace, who headed up that consultation and provided some very tangible ideas in a report. And I would work very closely with Mr. Wallace in terms of understanding what we should implement go forward. But yes, our landscape and our environment is very dear to Albertans, and I would not move in the direction of allowing any more exploration in that regard.
Would you consider reopening or refunding some of the supervised consumption services that have seen their funding cut in response to this opioid crisis that's claimed, more than 25,000 Canadians in the last 6 years?
Well, I've always felt that we needed a spectrum of supports available, right? So we've talked about recovery orientation, but yes, we do need a spectrum of supports that are available, and we'll definitely talk to the experts, because I'm not an expert in this area, but I want to hear from the experts as to what direction we need to move into. And I think supervised consumption sites have been very controversial. Again, and people all from different political stripes do agree. The location of those sites have been very difficult for the residents in those areas. And we need to have a stronger strategy around that. And again, I would talk to the experts for more information.
I know I got to let you go, and everybody wants to talk to you, et cetera. Let me just ask you in closing, because we care, and because a significant element of our listening audience is in your riding, and in both your and my home city of Calgary right now. We showed a couple photos out of the gates this morning of berms that are being constructed right now. They got backhoes working along Memorial Drive. They're going to try to contain this river. Give us a sense of what's happening and what you're seeing in Calgary right now with regards to potential flooding.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm going to be doing after this call. I'll be heading over to my constituency and having a closer look. I've received a note from Mayor Gondek as well, and we'll be having some further discussions around her in terms of what supports are going to be needed right away. I was overseeing the Springbank Reservoir 1 project as well, which is designed to prevent flood mitigation for these very kinds of situations. So I'm very hopeful that the situation is not going to deteriorate. And of course, that project is well into the future, but it's just indicative of the fact that these climate events are happening more and more. So I can't do a whole lot. I'm no longer a minister, but habits die hard. I will be talking to elected officials everywhere and to some of my government colleagues to understand what I can do and what supports are going to be immediately available.
Where were you in 2013 when that all went down? What do you remember about that? That was just obviously a devastating time. I was working in television down there. I remember driving down from Edmonton to Calgary to simulcast a province-wide show. I remember driving down about 3 a.m. down the QE2 and coming into Calgary, and it was just I grew up there, and I had never seen anything like it. I mean, it was like as you remember, the entire downtown core totally underwater. I mean, it was just it was wild to see. What do you remember?
So my twins were very young at that age, and I was at home with them, and we had friends who lived in the downtown core who packed up all their belongings and came and stayed with us. And my husband was calling me from downtown, and I could just hear it in his voice. He was in a state of shock and he was devastated. And so as he was driving, we were talking about what was going to happen and how we were going to help certain families. And in the days after, I was home with the kids, but we were making sandwiches and delivering food to impacted families. And I did make it out to some households and help them clean out their basements. But I just remember thinking, the way these climate events can impact and turn over somebody's life, turn it over upside down, inside out. Anybody can be vulnerable. Yeah. And that's why I felt really strongly about the SR1 project, to make sure that we started construction as soon as possible, just to make sure a situation like that can never happen again.
That's Rajan Sawhney. She's still the MLA for Calgary Northeast, but she's resigned as Alberta's transportation minister to declare her candidacy for the leadership of the United Conservative Party. It's nice to connect with you, and hey, if you become premier, I expect we'll have to make these conversations a regular thing. Thanks for making time for Real Talk.
I can't wait. Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure.
You
Thank
got
you.
it. The Real Talkers, let us know what you think about what you heard. I just checked in on the live chat. We got lots of engagement there, which is awesome to see. And everybody's got their own take, their own. What's really interesting to see is, especially this happens during a leadership race, and then of course also during a general election, is people come to the table. I'm talking citizens, engaged citizens like you, with your priorities. So some of you might say, ask her about coal, or ask her about curriculum, or ask her about mental health supports. Some of you might have sort of what might be described as, what do I call it? Not like a niche issue. I don't mean that sounds a little too dismissive, but an issue that's really important to you and your family, but it's not all over everybody else's radars. I think about these, I'm going to get it wrong, but was it these insulin pumps? Remember that the government was going to pull funding for? The Alberta government, this is a provincial story for those of you listening outside the province, and we would get messages from people. We did get a ton, emails, tweets from people saying, you got to talk about this. This is going to screw us over. This is a big deal. If your family doesn't have a member that's diabetic, or that requires insulin, or that was tapped into that program, it's probably not on your radar, but it matters to those folks, right? So we try to cover as much ground as we can in these interviews. We obviously leave a lot on the table, and these are ongoing conversations as this leadership race unfolds. I saw some of you asking in the live chat, well, when are you going to talk to this candidate? When are you going to talk to this candidate? We have invites out to all of them, and we'll probably connect with, I would imagine, most of them. Some of them may decline. You never know how that's going to go. That's kind of how a talk show works. I have my own thoughts on some of Ms. Sawhney's answers. She's campaigning for the leadership of a party, so she's got a whole team. I know some of the people on her team I know personally, and they're skilled and they're great at messaging and political strategy. She's got to find that sweet spot where she can retain the support across those different sort of spots on that political spectrum. I thought it was interesting. The interview just happened. I haven't really had time to chew on it with regards to supervised consumption. She says one of the things that we know that can be really contentious is the location of these sites, and we really have to talk to people about where they're located. Sure. Probably in my mind, the most important element of the conversation around supervised consumption services is that they work, and that nobody in history in Canada has ever overdosed and died at a supervised consumption site. Meantime, what did we hear 24 hours ago on this show, 48 hours ago, 72 hours ago? We've had ongoing conversations about this. Remember the Northwest Fest film, the documentary we were talking about Vancouver's downtown east side and these supports down there. More than 25,000 Canadians have died since 2016 due to opioid poisoning, drug overdose, and 0 of those deaths have occurred at supervised consumption services. Mm-hmm. So maybe nobody wants one right next door to their condo, but
if it saved lives, like what?
Right? Can you imagine if we were like,
trade-off?
I mean, it's a little bit apples and oranges. I don't want to sort of dumb down our conversation here by introducing this, but can you imagine if we had vaccination stations for COVID-19, but people started pushing back? Well, I don't want it in my neighborhood, and then we started saying, well, we're not sure. We're not sure if we can have these vaccination areas because these people don't want it in their neighborhood.
But those people, they don't want it wide, like noise, crime, or just looking out their window at people who may not be on the same spectrum as they are in life. So
probably all of the above.
I mean, we can deal with noise and crime in other ways.
Well, there are people that have and here's where evidence,
it saves lives, who cares?
And this is where evidence is really important, right? And we talk about, we want peer review studies, we want evidence, like Professor Ben Perrin, who was Stephen Harper's conservative prime minister, right? He was Stephen Harper's criminal justice advisor. Ben was on the show, 2 days ago, I think? Mm-hmm. And he was talking, he said there's more than 100 peer-reviewed studies that support supervised consumption services. You are going to find people that will say, I live near one, and I found a needle in my backyard. And you can understand how that would be really troubling for somebody that has a little kid in their backyard, and they found a needle in their backyard. Well, I mean, and I don't mean to dismiss people's perspectives, but also probably the best way to keep needles out of back alleys and backyards is to make sure that more of the supervised consumption is happening in the location, in the facility.
Like these sites aren't going to be in the suburbs. These are located in places where people are using the most, right? So
yeah. And then also we acknowledge that a lot of people that are using opioids, I mean, that crosses these socioeconomic borders, and it's people of all. You got CEOs that are, my brother works, I say this often. I mean, a lot of my perspectives come from firsthand kind of the horse's mouth type scenarios. And he never betrays the trust of any of their clients. He never obviously provides any identifying details or anything like that.
These people are at every level.
He tells me, John, he says people literally come in 3-piece suits, briefcases, absolutely professionals. People come in with their AirPods in, taking a business phone call. They come in, they use under supervision. They make sure that they mellow out. They make sure that everything's kosher. They thank their healthcare professional for being there, and they go on their way. I mean,
a large percentage of these people are people who've been injured at work, went on medication for it, developed a problem. Like these are regular people. These aren't just, everyone has this picture of who they think.
100%. Glenna right now, I just dropped in the live chat. I love this. You guys are great. Glenna says the people using these sites are your family, right? Kimberly says, but those people who have opioid addictions are not priorities. Some people with addictions are functioning daily in high-level jobs. They live in affluent neighborhoods. They have families too. Absolutely right. Dr. Bradley Martin, my man. Great to see him here live. He says, this is just evidence of stigma. Yup. And Bradley says, we want actual evidence when it comes to crime. I mean, I've interviewed presidents of community leagues in inner city neighborhoods, and you get different stories. Some of them have said that crime's actually down. There's been more police patrol around. Others have said, well, we've seen an uptick in crime. Is it anecdotal? Is it causation, correlation? Who knows? I mean, this is not to dismiss these complaints.
No.
I think that the more, and this show plays a role in this, the more conversation we have about this, right? If somebody writes into the show and says, here's my perspective, here's my personal lived experience, we want to share that so other people can chew on it. This isn't a show where we pass everything through the filter to see if everybody agrees, and if everybody agrees, then we can present it and all pat ourselves on the back for choosing the right perspective on issues every single time. That's not it. But it's also a show that will side heavily with science and data and evidence.
And we know they work, and we know they save lives. So let's refine how they're done and make them better. That's the bottom line.
I think it's interesting. One of the things I liked about what Rajan does, and we'll see how it plays out, is right out of the gate, she goes, yeah, I'm like center right. She just says, here's where I am. Like if you're trying to figure out of all these names, because there's going to be a lot of them by the time that this is all said and done, my guess is that you'll have probably, let's say 5 to 8 serious contenders, 5 to 8 serious ones. I'd really like to see like some sort of a business or community leader. I'd like to see somebody without political background enter this and make it interesting, as opposed to a bunch of former cabinet ministers all claiming that they had no say in any of the decisions.
Yeah.
That's going to be a bit of a boring race, but I think it'd be interesting if somebody came in and shook it up a little bit.
I'm not going to say which things I agreed with what she was saying or not. I'm not going to get into that, but I did like you just said, how she was brave and just said right off the bat, I'm moderate, I'm center, because immediately you're going to gain some people who are going to listen to you more. And there's some people who are just going to tune out, like the more far-right conservatives, right?
Yeah.
But hey, you say you're closer to center, I immediately peek up and start listening to you, because I try to start every opinion I form from the center, right? So.
All right. I could sit here and just
He's
read.
here.
We've got a big kind of a big deal here, ready to rock. Bryan Baeumler in just a second. I want to remind. There he is, right there. He's going, Jesperson, what the hell is going on? Right? Do we get to hang out or not? He's like, I'm giving you my morning. Like, do we get to hang out or not? All right. Before we do, can we do a bit of a show and tell here? Can we take people into the Friesen Brothers South Edmonton store? So I went there yesterday with my little guy doing a bit of a grocery run, and I wanted to show off a few things that I think you might find pretty cool. You're going to find Alberta-made products, local products everywhere you go, including their smoked dog bones. How about this? You got somebody doing some smoking in their backyard. I'm talking the brisket variety. I'm talking the 12-hour process that just drives the whole neighborhood nuts. Everybody hoping for an invitation. Look at these pork bellies they've got. Their real butchers are making these available. I used to buy from a bit of a meat dealer back in the day. I can tell you that Friesen Brothers prices are lower. The quality is higher. Unbelievable stuff.
Here's what I want. The backyard margaritas.
This is great, right? This is Alberta made. This is local margarita mix, but I checked it out even closer, and this is because in our family we've been doing a lot of the non-alcoholic varieties of things through this pregnancy.
Oh, it's not.
So it's not just like mix. It's actually a non-alcoholic drink.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So it's kind of perfect for if you're laying off the sauce, if you need to mix one in between the Coronas, you can find that made in Alberta. And I wanted to highlight this as well. These are Baba's Own petahe, you got the pierogies, you got the cabbage rolls, all benefiting efforts in Ukraine right now.
Oh, wow.
You don't find that at every grocery store, right?
I
Friesen
wonder
Brothers.
how many cabbage rolls are sold in Edmonton.
Oh,
'Cause
man.
the Ukrainian, like, they just must fly off the shelf.
Well, you know what I love too is like the frozen pierogi market in Edmonton too is a competitive one because everybody wants to know about your credentials. Who made these? Well, these are Baba's own, and you'll only find them at Friesen Brothers, Alberta grown and Alberta owned. You know, Park Power is operating across our let me try that again. They're operating across our home province as well, and it feels good to support local. When your utilities support local, even better. You know, 10% of their profits on electricity go to non-profits in their community, and when you sign up, you get to choose which charity benefits from your electricity bill. How cool is that? Parkpower.ca is the website. The promo code to save $70 off your first bill is 2022-Real Talk. And before we get to Bryan Baeumler, I have to let you know about what Infinity Healthcare is doing, because I know that for a lot of families, finding reliable, trustworthy home care for your loved one is right at the top of your to-do list. Maybe grandma needs to remember to take her meds. Some days she's missing them. Maybe your uncle is leaving pre-prepared, nutritious meals in the fridge. He forgets they're there, or he's not heating them up, or whatever. Maybe the cat's litter box isn't getting changed. Maybe the laundry's piling up. Whatever it is, Infinity Healthcare finds that perfect fit. Their healthcare aides across the province are allowing families to breathe easier knowing they have home care they can trust. You can find it online at infinity-8.ca. Well, it was our pleasure to talk to members of Parliament, Gord Johns out of BC, Matt Genereux out of Alberta the other day to find out what politicians at the federal level are doing across the board to work on men's mental health. In just a second, we're going to check in with celebrity Bryan Baeumler. Most of you know exactly who we're talking about, but Johnny, can we tee this up? A little bit of a reminder for folks. This is exactly what this guy does, and why it seems that everybody that's tuning in around the world has fallen so in love with his story. Check this out.
We're back.
We are back.
We're back.
Back on the island.
Back in Florida.
Back to Sarulamar. Back to the airport. Back in Florida.
Back to the airport.
Back at Sarulamar.
Airport.
Resort.
Florida.
Flights delayed.
House. Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, but back to normal.
No, this is our totally not normal new normal.
Yeah, all right. That's the Bauemler clan, Island of Bryan. Everybody loves it. I think, Bryan, what now? Season 4 as we welcome you back to Real Talk. It's good to see you here. This is the 4th season, isn't it? This currently running?
Yeah, we've aired the first half of season 4. We're still working on the second half, but it's coming soon.
Oh, is that right? So you're airing the first half of a season. You're not even finished production of the second. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when it's real life.
Yeah. Well, this is you're going to be supporting this Father's Day on the Hill event. It's actually happening today, and we're excited you've made time to talk to us. It's cool to see a guy like you bring your story to a mental health initiative. And the reason I wanted to play that quick clip of your show is you and your family are accustomed to bringing cameras into your reality, right? You're accustomed to letting people see your kids. People know what your wife looks like. People know about your frustrations. People see Bryan to a certain degree as you present yourself, but talking about your mental health publicly, that's taking it to another level.
Well, it's interesting. People see the edited version, of our lives. And I think people see the edited version of everybody's life. Social media now, everyone's got the great picture. As guys, we tend to say, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And you're programmed to say, "Everything's good. How are you?" And it's great. And you walk off and you find a dark corner to curl up and cry in when you need to. It's interesting. I had a real interesting journey with anxiety, severe anxiety and depression, from my early 20s, right through to my mid 30s. And, agoraphobia, 24-hour a day anxiety and panic. I thought at any second I was going to drop dead. And, I filmed the first 3 years of the shows, Disaster DIY, like that. So if you watch any of those early shows, there's a 99% chance, it doesn't matter what I'm saying, in my head, I'm thinking I'm going to drop dead at any second. It's going to be pretty embarrassing, on camera. But you have to internalize this stuff. Guys are raised, to be tough, especially in the trades and hands-on things. And it's like, big boys don't cry and, don't be a baby and just internalize it and go. But the truth is, when I had kids, and I got a little older, and I realized we're playing the back nine now. I mean, let's be honest. It's sad, but we might even be on we might be on like hole 15 or 16.
Well, I was going to say 13. I hope we're on 12 or 13. Yeah, 16's a little.
See.
Yeah.
I read a thing the other day, and it said, we all think midlife is when you're getting close to 50, but midlife, for the average life expectancy of a male is 37, which is terrifying. That was 11 years ago for me. So, a lot of this stuff, I think we have to talk about. Our oldest son, started to have some anxiety issues when he was younger. And I kind of kicked into dad mode. And I said, listen, here's why. Here's the science behind it. Here's why you feel like this way. Here's how to talk yourself out of that circle that just makes things worse. And for him, that was effective. Within 6 months to a year, he was kind of through it and past it, experienced it, knows how to deal with it. When I first, I think I was 22, and I had this feeling like I was having a heart attack at 22. Sitting having lunch, and I thought. I looked at my buddy. I said, I think I need to go to the hospital. My pulse feels like it's all over the place. And he just looked at me and said, don't be a moron. You're fine. And I said, no, I think I do. So they hooked up to all these machines and everything. And the net result was they looked at me and said, oh, that's weird. I don't know. Go home and sleep it off. So I went home and slept it off and thought, well, shit, I'm never going to wake up. This is it. But had somebody educated me at that time and talked to me about that, I think that would have cut about 15 years off of that journey for me, where it was really, self-treatment, exposure therapy, just realizing, okay, fine, this, it's not going to happen. I think that's what kind of got me through it.
I'll confess to you that when you mentioned you've lived with agoraphobia, I Googled it because I don't know a ton about it. Would you agree with this assessment or this description of this from the Mayo Clinic's website? They say it's a type of anxiety disorder in which you fear and avoid places or situations that might cause you to panic and make you feel trapped, helpless, or embarrassed. Would that fit your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real, in my 20s, I would leave the house and 5 minutes later, there's three people in line to pay for gas and you just start to freak out. All you want to do is run home into your safe place and hide and pop Ativan all day. I mean, I lost weeks of my life, popping Ativan and kind of waking up like, what the hell was that? There was a time in my life in my 20s, I thought I should just take this whole bottle and I'll feel better, somehow, which is crazy. The statistics on men's mental health are pretty shocking. 75% of suicides in Canada are by men, and it's younger men. There's 4,000 suicides a year in Canada. And, mental health for men doesn't just affect men. It's not a men's mental health issue. Mental health for men, anxiety, depression, it comes out in anger. It comes out in irritability. It comes out in mood swings. That translates into, potentially crime, domestic violence. That flows down to your children, your family, everything. So that it's really an issue that, affects everybody.
This is, I realize that what I'm about to say is like probably perpetuating the problem, but I want to make a point, and that is just that you and I have known each other for a while. I think that this is our fourth or fifth interview. We've spoken on TV and we've spoken on radio. You've been here on the show, on the podcast.
We've sipped whiskey in your studio. Yes,
we've sipped whiskey and at like 8:30 in the morning. I remember like when you come in, you're one of these people that like brings energy into a room. You know this. I mean, there's. Can I say that there's a lot of people that know how to do what you do on the sense of like improving homes or building buildings or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
But there's a very short list of people that build their own company and have international endorsements and have popular television shows that are in syndication in dozens of countries and that are household names, and that when you attach your name to this Father's Day on the Hill event, men are going to pay attention and men are going to go and they're going to go to the website because it's you. You're this captivating, gregarious, intelligent, funny, likable person. And from the moment that I first met you, even the handshake, my grandpa Rudy taught me all about handshakes. You can tell a lot from Bryan Baeumler's handshake. I mean, the last thing, here's where I get into perpetuating stigma, and here's what I realize. Maybe the last thing you would suspect is that Bryan Baeumler's curled up in a ball, that Bryan Baeumler's looking at downing his whole bottle of Ativan, that Bryan Baeumler has cracks in his foundation. right? I mean, at what point did
Yeah.
you was there something that happened where you said, you know what, I got to be a little bit more vulnerable. I got to show at least some people this. I got to start talking about it. I mean, did you have to get over a real hump there?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it's funny listening to you describe me. It's like I feel like we should go to dinner and talk about this.
Hey, a long walk on the beach, man. I'll do it.
Yeah, man. It's interesting, back in, through my 20s and early 30s, and especially when I got into the television. I mean, my first day of television, I stood there and I my heart rate went up. I started sweating and I thought, oh man, I've signed up for this show. I forgot I have a massive anxiety disorder and I just want to run home and hide. But it really, doing that wasn't an option. I had bills to pay. I had a family to feed, and a lot of people suffer in silence. And I certainly did. Once I learned to manage it and get through it, I really did a lot of research, and that's the way I am with anything. I'll read every book, I'll watch every video, I'll ask every question. Once I understood the science behind it, why are my hands tingling? Why is my heart rate going up? Why do I have tunnel vision? Why do I feel like I'm going to die? Once I understood the science behind it, I could put two and two together and start to manage it myself. And there's still times I get up on stage and there's 5,000 people, and the heart rate goes up a little bit, but I know why. So I don't perpetuate that spin off into full blown panic. I think it was, again, when I had kids, I think I just said, this needs to be talked about. I think we need to remove the barriers from talking about it. And about a year ago, it was interesting. One of my friends sent me, you see all these motivational memes and sayings and what have you that come around.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine sent me something, and it was very much like, if you're a dude, it's okay to, hug your bro and have a good cry and say you're not okay. Not verbatim, but along those lines. And I just, I thought all the content we put is so curated, and it's so, it's sunny in the background. Everything's great. We're ahead of schedule. We're under budget. The marriage is great. The kids are happy. It's all bullshit. It's not always bullshit, but it's certainly there.
Well, it's curated.
It is curated. It has to be. I mean, everybody's life now on social media is curated. Like, how are you doing? You're going to say, I'm good, man. How are you?
Great. Yeah.
I'm shit. I had a huge fight with my wife last night. I feel like a piece of garbage, and I just, I need someone to hug me while I cry. You're not going to say that, but you should be able to say that. So I took this thing that a friend sent me, and I don't know, I hit, post, add to story, whatever it is. And I was shocked. I probably had 50 or 60 direct messages from other contractors, big, burly, men don't cry. I'm a tough guy. I can lose an arm and it's just a flesh wound kind of thing. About 50 of these guys sent me messages and they said, holy shit, man, thanks. I really needed to hear that today. I've been having a rough week, rough month. I had this, I had that. And that's when I realized there's this connection that people have that everybody's putting on a show. I mean, let's be honest. We're all pretty optimistic. Like, none of us are getting out of this alive. You know what I mean? We're all going the same place. We have to enjoy and support each other and enjoy that journey along the way. So if I can share, a tidbit of information of my experience that I dealt with for 15 years that can help someone cut that off in 6 months, or maybe a year, then, I feel like I should do it.
Bryan, every time we connect, it's an absolute pleasure. The door is always open to you on this show. The only reason that I'm wrapping up our conversation is because I happen to know you have another interview that you've got to get to.
You're going to get yelled at.
I'm going to get yelled at.
Not by me.
And your publicist will never let me talk to you again, so I'm not going to fuck up like that. But let me just ask you in closing. Hey, you're rubbing shoulders with politicians. You're really moving the needle on this conversation. This is all going down in Ottawa. After we wrap with you, I'll give everybody the details. Would you ever consider a run at politics?
That's funny. I had that conversation over breakfast. And little known fact, I do have a degree in political science. And, speaking at this event today on Parliament Hill, I think is the closest I've ever come to actually utilizing it. Never say never, Ryan. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. I like it. We can get you to actually overhaul 24 Sussex once you're prime minister. You can just do it yourself, buddy. Can you think of the views on that TV series? Hey, I just respect the hell out of what you're doing, Bryan. People can check it out. I'm showing the website right now, fathersdayonthehill.ca for more. That's Bryan Baeumler. Of course, you know where to find him on Instagram. About 250,000 people following him there on Twitter too. Thanks, brother.
All right. Thanks, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, you bet. Good to see you, too. And woof, he rolls right into another interview at 11:30 Eastern. The guy's a beauty.
Yeah. said a lot of things that resonated.
Yeah. I think about some of the conversations we've had when it comes to specifically to men's mental health and conversations I've had with friends, for example, that are firefighters. And they talk about how there's a bit of a culture change happening in the fire halls after tough calls.
Yeah.
Everybody used to, well, I don't know how they used to be in the 60s and 70s. I know that we have some retired firefighters that join us on the regular. Maybe they'll chime in on our live chat. But I know even in the more modern era, like everybody with smartphones, for example, some of my pals would tell me that after a tough call, and we're talking about, the really difficult stuff. Children, house fires,
stuff that
death by suicide, stuff like this. The
unsee.
real tough stuff. And they said that the guys or the firefighters, let me say, not all men, obviously, would go back to the fire, and then they all kind of like go on their phones. Maybe some guys would like have a coffee in the kitchen, or maybe some, kind of laugh, try to take their minds off it. Maybe some guys might click on the sports highlights, and then a whole bunch of guys would just go by themselves and go on their phones. And maybe they're checking in with their family. Maybe they're taking their minds off it. Maybe they're playing fantasy football. Who knows?
It is a way to distract.
But now it sounds like on a more regular basis, the captain in the hall or whoever will say, like, have a seat, and we're going to talk. We're going to talk about this, right? You talk about some of the conversations that are happening, I don't know, wherever it is, on the golf course or in even industries that might be sort of predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly more men, like job sites. I think it's really interesting to hear Bryan talk about all those contractors reaching out to him, privately reaching out saying, thank you for talking about this in the trades.
I think even here, like, we ask each other every day, how are you? And we look each other in the eye because we know, I like how Bryan said that. We are predisposed to say, yeah, everything's fine, man. Good. How are you? But like, imagine if you just, when you went to work, because at least half the days of the week, you're not feeling 100%. Like Bryan said, what if we just said to each other, hey, I'm actually feeling really shitty today. Had a huge fight with my wife. I can't concentrate on work.
Yeah.
And then you just had like a 5-minute conversation with someone. It's going to calm you down. It's going to bring your pulse down. It's going to bring that anxiety down. So, but a lot of us would just say, like he said, oh, I'm good, man. Everything's fine. Bury it.
I appreciate these comments, and it's not. I won't say it's easy to bury it, but sometimes it feels like the easier option.
It's
but the
takes
long-term implication of that, or in some cases even the short-term. I mean, speaking of retired firefighters, Lauren Corbett. I happen to know Lauren personally. Met him at an Oilers game. As a matter of fact, this guy walked up to me. I posted the photo of it. Walks up wearing a Real Talk Ryan Jesperson snapback cap, and I just said the first thing we did, we shook hands, and then that evolved into a hug. And then I said, we got to go right to the bar. We got to get a couple cold ones, then we can talk. You got to get a couple cold ones, then we can talk. Anyway, Lauren became is a cherished friend early. The point is, he's a retired fire chief. He says facing one's fears is brave. Reaching for help is more brave. Tracy says, identifying the problem, sorting through the options, making a decision, developing a plan takes commitment and always feels hard. Absolutely. Tracy's sharing with us. She says, panic attacks are scary. I had one at 24 when I decided to take my first overseas vacation. And then there's a lot of conversation going on about pierogies as well, which I kind of suspected might happen.
No, it popped off.
Let me give a shout out to Haas in particular, because I need to create an entry here. Before I do, I'm going to come back. I'll recognize Haas in just a second, but I got some backlog here because we're just having great conversation after great conversation, and we have to pay a couple bills. And so I want to do that by reminding you that Kubi Energy is providing solar energy solutions to power your life. I heard from a real talker named Josh in Vancouver yesterday who said to me, he reached out specifically to say, I didn't realize Kubi was in BC. I go, yeah. Josh is interested because he drives a Tesla and he wants to put a charging station into his house. Kubi, they're Tesla certified, so they set up these great residential systems, solar on the roof or wherever the best place for it is, and then a Tesla charging station so your EV can plug in a way that's reliable, that's installed by professionals. Everybody's doing EVs now. You see Volvo, I think, said over the weekend they're going to, by 2030, it's Buick, Buick, by 2030, the whole lineup EVs.
I like it. I love it.
It's like the 2023s are out now, right? That's 7 years from now. That's coming quick. It's coming quick. More people are going to be looking at putting charging stations in. It's one of the things that Kubi does. You can get your free quote today at kubienergy.ca. They're going to be at the Real Talk Golf Classic.
Those guys are awesome.
Bunch of beauties. Same with Eden Landscaping. We can't wait for them to be out there at the tourney. It's next Thursday, by the way. Still have a few foursomes left. I think there's 3 foursomes left till we sell out.
And you got a planter problem, so you got to call Eden this weekend.
No. No, they blew off and exploded all over the sidewalk, but the hanging baskets themselves were not damaged.
Oh, so you just got to refill.
It's just it's just like a reconstruction. What needs to happen? Some of the geraniums are a little worse for wear, but should have just left it to Eden Landscaping. Bringing outdoor spaces to life, although they're a little bit more than hanging baskets. They're retaining walls and edible garden boxes and water features, stonework, outdoor kitchens. No job too small. There's no job too big either. You can check out their portfolio online at landscapeedmonton.ca. That's our friends at Eden Landscaping. At Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge, they make it easier than it ever has been to shop for your next vehicle, whether your family's downsizing based on fuel prices, or maybe you're ramping it up or ramming it up with your new trailer. You need something to pull it. St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge has the best selection in the province. They can combine their inventories to make sure you get exactly what you need, or you can custom order using the shopping tools link. You just click it down, that drop-down menu on their website, and there you go. You can buy your vehicle, design it online exactly how you want it at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. And our friends at Local Environmental want to remind you their top priority is keeping it local and having that family business feel every time you deal with them. They compete for business, whether it's the small ma and pa shops, the big hotels, malls, they do it all. We back onto a commercial type area in our neighborhood, and I saw a new local waste bin out there the other day. All right. Keep it local. Check out localenvironmental.ca today. I was just waiting until the band was
killed
done,
it.
I thought we could wrap it up there.
Hit the post.
So Haas is going, well, you better get to my comment because you promised you would. And I promised Haas yesterday by way of email that I would give them a shout out on the show because they pointed out something that's pretty important. And we appreciate the fact checks that happen here on the show. If you hear something and it doesn't pass the smell test, if you go, I'm pretty sure that's incorrect, we want to hear from you.
The Baba's thing?
Someone said that I said Baba's is only available at Friesen Brothers.
Yeah,
I don't think I said that, but I'll go back and check the tape.
What are you talking about?
You can get Baba's Own everywhere. Well, can I develop my thought? Jeez. You're like, actually, Ryan, there's some more criticism. I'm not sure if you missed it, but did I say that Baba's? I didn't say Baba's Own is only available
I don't
at
think you
Friesen
said
Brothers.
that. No,
I don't think so. But if I did, I apologize. I'm sure you can get it everywhere. Baba's Own just got like $3,000 worth of advertising right now. Hey, that's great. Their proceeds are going to Ukraine. So
when I post the episode of this, I'll do like a rewind and then I'll play the clip.
That's an amazing idea.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Check the tape?
Do that. Yeah, check the tape.
I like that about the sports talk shows where there's like the producer that sits in the back and then at the end they spend 3 minutes like, where did the host screw up?
So let's cue it up right now. Let's check the tape, Ryan. And then we'll check the tape. We know this is live now, but
turns out I was right, John. We'll see. Sometimes we have more fun on the podcast. Sometimes you got to be here live on YouTube. Who knows? Haas is like, read my damn comment. You said you're going to read my comment, so read it. Haas says, I've never met a pierogi I didn't like. Baba's, Chimo, Uncle Ed's. He says, the yellow bag matters. What does that mean? He says, the yellow bag matters not. They are all excellent tools for getting sour cream, bacon, and onion into my mouth. Mm-hmm. Well said, Haas.
Because the different colored bags, right? There's like the sweet leaf cabbage. There's the onion cabbage. There's potato.
Do you have like a dream pierogi? Like
I just like the rice and onion.
Yeah.
I like
classic.
That. Classic. Just keep it like that.
The classic. Yeah. I mean, I'm up for exploring. I've had some that are they get a little squirrely. Like, do we really need to? It's become like pizza too. Do we need to make everything into a calzone? Does everything need to be made into a pierogi? I don't know. But here's the real thing I wanted to get to with Haas, who was tuned in yesterday when we were talking to Bruce Arthur from the Toronto Star and from TSN. And Bruce, great interview. We talked a lot about this LIV Tour in golf and how he thinks that if the Saudis continue to spend and spend and spend on this, the PGA Tour could become the second most popular or the second most watched golf tour in the world. He said that's a real possibility. You really should check out that conversation. And then the beautiful thing about talking with Bruce is he writes about politics as well. Mm-hmm. And so you can talk sports and politics. It's kind of how I hang out with my friends anyway. So I appreciate those. We talk about everything, right? Believe it or not, sometimes we even talk about dumb stuff. But Bruce kind of gets into, Pierre Polyev and Bitcoin and a ton of stuff. You can find that on our June 14th episode of Real Talk with Bruce Arthur. That was a great conversation. And not to mention as well, Mubin Sheikh, who talked to us, the former undercover operative for CSIS, about these Idaho arrests, this Patriot Front story. Fascinating show yesterday.
And if you know his background, when you're watching him talk, you just...
Right?
Everything just hits a little harder. Yeah,
like he was recruited. He describes himself as an extremist, as a young man. And then he found a journey out. You can read more about him. We'll just follow him on Twitter at Mr. Mubin Sheikh and connect with him. And he's committed really his life now to working with nonprofit. He works with an NGO, I think it's called Parents for Peace off the top of my head, down in the U.S. He teaches public safety at Seneca College, and he's a consultant. And I get the sense as well he doesn't tell us everything he's doing. Do you get that sense too?
Yeah, there's a little bit of reservation there. But like when you hear what he's been through and what he's done, you hang on every word. So go back to that episode yesterday.
Yeah,
and
well
then
said.
Going into Bruce, that was a great one too.
Yeah, well said. Anyway, Bruce says when we start talking about controversial ownership or controversial investment in sports and whether or not fans care about it, he says, we'll take a look at, pro football, like we're talking soccer in Europe. And he says that, Dubai owns this team and it's, no one seems to care and yada, yada, yada. And Hawes reached out and he said it made me sad to hear Bruce Arthur incorrectly assert that Dubai, which isn't even in Saudi Arabia, it's in the United Arab Emirates, owns PSG football team. PSG is owned by the Qatar Investment Fund. He says yet another country separate from Saudi Arabia and the UAE. He says that's a hell of a lot of misinformation used to set up his narrative. Haas goes on to say, really, if we need to tee off on relationships had with the Saudis, we should be looking at our own government's relationship with them. That's actually something we have a bit of influence on. And Haas hits the nail on the head there. And I agree with him.
But Bruce went on Twitter. Do you want to pull up the tweet?
He ate his words, didn't he?
He did. He said, I said a lot of great things in this interview, but I also was pretty dumb in pointing to that.
Yeah, I think he said something like his whole interview wasn't completely stupid or something like that, which I thought was kind of a nice self-effacing one there. But here's what he said, and we always appreciate the retweet. It's the little Real Talk bump from these big deals that come and spend time with us on the show. But yesterday he tweeted, and isn't it kind of funny that every time you want to find something quick, you realize that this person has tweeted 55,000 times.
He's a big tweeter.
He is. He's on Twitter a lot. You can follow him at Bruce_Arthur. Here he is, 18 hours ago in pushing out. You can always find our highlight clips. John works hard on pulling those and captioning them. We sure appreciate your efforts, Johnny, behind the scenes.
Thank you.
We shared the highlight here of him talking about the PGA Tour becoming the second best golf tour on earth. He's not saying it's going to. He's not calling it, but he's saying it could. And then he follows up and says, I made some dumb mistakes in this chat. PSG is owned by, he says, owned by the UAE. I used Dubai incorrectly. Haas clarifies, and I looked it up, so it's Qatar that he's looking for, but he says, otherwise, I was not totally stupid. That from Bruce Arthur. But all of this to say, Haas, shout out, and we appreciate it. And thanks for making, the show more accurate. We want to make sure that when people hear things, and then they're going to talk to their friends and go, we heard it on Real Talk, we want them to have confidence. We're not infallible, and sometimes things fly under our radar. I admitted to Haas in an email yesterday, I said, I don't know enough about pro soccer to have sniffed that one out. So I really appreciated him chiming in. By the way, we had asked everybody, based on that Saudi golf story, if you, like Phil Mickelson, were a pro golfer and the Saudi-owned LIV Golf Invitational Series offered you $200 million to defect from the PGA, would you sign on the dotted line? The 24 hours on our unscientific, unofficial Twitter poll are up. More than 1,000 votes. We appreciate that. And it turns out the majority of people have voted hell yeah.
As we said yesterday,
61%, which it didn't really move, John. The highest, I didn't check in on it sort of religiously, but the highest I saw was 67. We were at about two-thirds. And by the time it evened out, 61% say, they'd pretty much do anything for 200. Well, they didn't say that.
It'd be interesting to see the subsets of like who these people are. I bet a majority of the 61% have family, have kids. I bet the majority of the people who said, no, I got to think about it, are younger folk who maybe have, are more passionate about their opinions and,
Well, yeah.
I just think the people who would take the money and say, hell yeah, are probably thinking my kids and their kids are set up for life kind of thing.
I mean, anybody you want is set up for life. If you have $200 million and you put it
It's not just 200 million.
If
You
you-
reinvest that, and you're.
But that's the thing. Like,
you're wealthy.
even if you're the laziest,
Yeah.
like even if you just put it in your checking account,
Yeah.
even if you just buy GICs,
Unless you're an idiot.
you're going
and
to,
spend
unless
it
you're an
horribly.
idiot, like
Yeah.
a GIC paying you 1.5%. I hope I get the math right. Is going to return
Just
$3
get-
million a year.
Even
interest.
Even a savings account. The interest on a savings
Yeah,
account.
what is it now? I mean,
It's
it's
gonna make you
lousy.
money
Banks
every year.
screw us.
Still, though.
They do, but still, what is it? It's probably like 1% or something like that.
I don't know if you could put it in a savings account. They'd be like, no.
They're like 200 mil.
No.
No, I'm watching this show. Have you watched We Crashed
Yes.
on
Okay,
Apple
so
about this WeWork thing?
I told you about this like 2 months ago, and
Did
you're
you?
like, "What? I'm too busy. Kids are coming." And, But now it's good, eh?
It's pretty
really
good with
Jared Leto,
Leto
Yeah.
and Anne Hathaway. No, not
Amazing.
Anne Hathaway.
It is
Anne
It's
Hathaway.
Yep.
And it's about the WeWork business, which, by the way, Carrie pointed out, we've been watching this together. We always love when we find a show we can watch together.
Great.
WeWork is still an operating company.
It is.
They
and
still have
it's-
like 700 locations around the world, these co-working spaces.
And they've just started to get above the red line now and actually make
Okay.
money. It's not a ton, but
Okay.
like it's not a weird idea. There are tons of co-working spaces,
Yeah.
right? But he was just so Jared Leto's character.
His pace of growth was bonkers.
And he thought WeWork was going to be like Apple or like
Changing
you know
the
what I mean?
world.
Yeah, and man, you run a co-work space.
You throw
Like,
a ping
relax.
pong table in there, and we got a beer fridge. I don't know. No one's given us $4.4 billion. But I remember when he walks into the bank and he wants a line of credit, and he's just attracted $4.4 billion investment into his company. He wants a line of credit.
And he asked for $100 million.
He asked for
and they give
50,
him,
and the bank gives him 100.
Yeah, and
And-
then
and
they
it's
up
like,
it to $250,000 in like a couple months.
Oh, do they?
So
Okay.
that's like once you have
the
money,
beginning of the end.
the money just.
So the comments on the Twitter poll are interesting as well. 61% say, hell yeah, they'd go for $200 million. CC says, I get it for some of these guys who haven't made a ton, like these golfers, and are ending their competitive careers soon. CC says, but for guys like DJ, for like Dustin Johnson, Sergio Garcia, Westwood, Mickelson, they've made an absolute ton forever. It's really sad to see them participate and cast
I thought that
aside
too.
any sense of morality.
Yeah. Like I was like, okay, Phil Mickelson, he's got gambling debts. Maybe he's just like Bruce said, securing his future. But those other guys, I'm like, you don't need this money. You're still relevant. You could like go do things, so.
But are we? Well, I don't think it's black and white. I mean, for some people, it's like I'm not accepting Saudi blood money.
Rory.
It doesn't matter. Rory McIlroy, absolutely. Justin Thomas. I mean, all these guys that are making these comments, taking swipes at Greg Norman. If you missed our episode yesterday, even if you don't care about golf, it's a fascinating story. Jock says, I'd like to say no, but I worked jobs I was ashamed of for $35,000 a year. So Jock is for sale. John says, if anyone thinks you're worth $200 million, then you have no need of money or status in the sport. Best to retain one's dignity and self-respect. Wally says, it would depend on how much I was making before. If I was making like $2 or $5 million, then I would do it in a second. He says, I don't know. I don't know. Rick says, I voted no, considering many of these players have already won massive amounts of money. Siding with a country that's just one of the evil empire just seems wrong. Mike says, considering that's nearly twice as much as Tiger has made on the tour his entire career, which is accurate, he says, I would take the money. Jadalo says, why does the PGA deserve a monopoly? It's not that the PGA deserves a monopoly. Nobody's clutching their pearls worrying about the PGA.
No.
People are wondering whether, I mean, I actually think competition's healthy. I think it's fascinating. Like, I mean, it was stomped and it never became anything, but the XFL versus the NFL, I mean, come on, you're not taking down the NFL, but still, I mean, the KHL and the NHL or the WHA and the NHL back in the day, I mean, competing leagues can make things interesting.
Of course.
I can't think of the last time that one really burst on the scene and took over, attracted all the stars, but
It is funny, though, how Bruce was mentioning, like, America, the States, is the center of pro sports, but I wonder what pro sports is thinking with this. They must be a little scared, just a little scared that there may be, I mean, not basketball and football. Those guys are well paid, but like hockey, for example, some of those guys who are making $450,000 a year, if there was like you said yesterday, a Saudi hockey league and they offered them $5 million, I think they'd move their family there.
Yeah.
Like, come on. And like that comment just said, if I was making $2 or $5 million, then I'd definitely take the money. You would? If I had access
$5 million to
$5 million,
$200 million?
if I had $5 million right now, I would not take the money because I'd find a way to make more money with that $5 million, right?
And then
think
I'd be
people
calling you with my 200 million, and I'd be like, John, we're taking the jets to Bahamas this weekend. You'd be like, jets? You're like, I can't have a jet. I only have 5 million. And I'd be like, oh, see, because I got 200. So
Like, I think that 200 million is something people in debt. You know what I mean? Like Phil, he's probably like bankruptcy, right, or whatever.
what?
So
No, I don't think
Come
that's
on.
accurate. Is that I don't think that's accurate.
He's gonna Google it.
Is Phil Mickelson bankrupt? You know what the internet's going to say
Not
to me?
bankrupt,
Not
but
anymore.
I'm sure he has debts.
Not
I'm
anymore.
Sure the money he has is negative compared to like his homes, his cars, his credit card debt, his whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's not
Credit card debt. Credit card debt is for real
line
life,
of credit.
real people
line
like
of credit.
us.
Line of credit.
You think Phil Mickelson is checking his credit? Can you imagine? Like Phil Mickelson is. I don't think
he
he's
never
used to his.
checks it.
Meh. It's like, sorry, sir, your card's been declined on lunch at Applebee's. He's like, what?
Remember
No,
we talked
that's just a real.
yesterday
That's a
about-
real life problem for people like us.
We talked yesterday about not looking at the.
Not checking balances.
Phil Mickelson never checks a balance.
No.
Never.
I don't think so.
There's a person he has does that.
I don't
right?
think so.
Yeah.
Hey, if talk of money, economics, bookkeeping, accounting floats your boat, if you'd like to assist people through bankruptcy or maybe counsel people so they don't wind up there in the first place, if you feel a calling to a certain kind of career and you have that focus, you know ultimately what you'd like to do, but you're not necessarily 100% sure of how to get there, check out Canada's online university, Athabasca University, today. You're going, yeah, it might be too late for me to go to university. No, it's not. Yeah, but I don't want to leave my city, or I don't want to leave my job for that matter. You don't have to. Athabasca University offers world-class accredited online programs and courses. Accredited is a big deal. You know, your certification, ultimately your degree from this university, carries a lot of clout across the country, in part because of Athabasca's great reputation as a research center. They offer you the flexibility to learn at your own pace. So whether you have a family, a job, maybe a big trip coming up, maybe there's concerns. You don't want to pour yourself 100% into studies, but you want to start preparing yourself for a new and dynamic job opportunity. Visit athabascau.ca today. When it comes to Dairy Queen, I want to give you dealer's choice today, John. What do you think we should focus on when it comes to our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park? All right, it's the signature stack burgers. They just sent us a whole bunch of new ad elements, and so I just feel like you look like a kid in it. I was going to say a kid in a, you look like a kid in a Dairy Queen when you're picking out what we're going to talk about every day. Today, it's the loaded steakhouse burger I'm going to recommend. Those are those 200% all beef patties with the bacon, and of course, don't forget the famous Dairy Queen onion ring. That's all part of the loaded steakhouse stacker. It's the new lineup of signature stack burgers at the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road.
Phil Mickelson makes $50 million a year.
50.
Yeah, his net worth was $100 million up until he took this gig.
Right.
Now it's about $300 million. But it says he's got gambling debts in excess or losses over the last few years of over $40 million.
Okay.
So that combined with whatever else, lines of credit, houses, I don't know.
Phil Mickelson is a guy you'd love to have a beer with and say, tell me your craziest story.
I was in Vegas.
Right? Like
in a
if you,
penthouse.
first of all, it's weird when people can see your struggles. Like when someone can you imagine if the average person had a gambling issue that was readily available, searchable online? Like Larry Smith has lost a total of $11,600 in gambling this last year, and people are like, "What?" His pals are like, "Bud, you should ease off the gas a little bit, right?" I always think it's kind of weird when you have access. And how reliable is that information? I don't know.
Well, I think it comes out usually when you haven't paid the debts, right? Like if you pay the debts, I don't think the information really gets out there. Like with the Evander Kane thing, nobody knew he had a gambling problem till he walked out of a casino. And they had fronted him over $100,000 in chips or whatever, right?
I think people maybe knew at the very first point that Evander Kane had something going on with his finances when he Instagrammed a post to Floyd
with the
Money Mayweather
phone?
with this brick of cash, treating it like a phone, being like, "Yo, pick up," or whatever he said.
Yeah.
And I think people went, "That's not a good sign. That's not a good thing." You can let us know what you think about what we're talking about. We always want to know where our content is landing with you. We always want to know if you feel like There's real talk on the issues that matter to you, and our editorial process relies in great part by choice with where this audience lands. What's on your radar? What matters to you? What story's resonating with you? What do you want to hear more about? What are you not hearing about that you'd love to see us take on the show? You can be in touch with us anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Every Wednesday, we really look forward to this. Every Wednesday, our friends at Tourism Jasper provide us some highlights, some reminders of why we need to get out to Jasper National Park. It's MyJasper Memories, presented by Tourism Jasper. And this year, we're getting set to celebrate a centennial of sorts. How cool is this? Can you believe 100 years ago, the opening of the Jasper Park Lodge's legendary main buildings and cabins? I want to show you this quick video. Check this out. Now, this is Symphony Under the Stars. I want to be clear about this because there's a new event coming up, Symphony Under the Sun. But this is a great way to illustrate exactly the vibe that we're talking about. Getting outdoors on the shores of legendary Lac Beauvert. You've got the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra there performing. That's right. They pack up their instruments and they take it outside to the shores of beautiful Lac Beauvert at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge in celebration of the centennial. Now, this is happening on June 28th. This is less than 2 weeks away. So if you want to be there in celebration of this luxurious mainstay of Jasper, you're going to want to book your tickets like today at jasper.travel/real talk. Now, the sound here at an event like this, John, you're a sound expert. When you get a symphony orchestra performing right near water with those Rocky Mountains in the backdrop, that kind of natural amphitheater, the sound is going to be phenomenal.
You're going to be hearing it miles away.
Now, this is unlike its sister event. We were talking about the Jasper Dark Sky Festival. So this is the Symphony Under the Sun, of course, which offers the shining summer sun as the backdrop. It's an evening event, but the light dynamic there is going to be phenomenal. And when the sun does start to set, prepare to have your mind blown. Tickets to the concert, the dinner and a show option, which is what you're going to want to go with, available starting from $159 per person. And then there are a limited number of VIP rooms packages that are also available. You can contact the hotel directly, but we can point you in the right direction again at jasper.travel/real talk. And please do enjoy Symphony Under the Sun. You're going to want to stay on the property after something like that, I'm thinking.
Yeah, you're going to want to book a room. You're
going to want to book a room.
Yeah.
A nice walk along, like you take in the Edmonton, the ESO, the Symphony Orchestra. You walk along the shore of Lac Beauvert. I will say mind the elk. Mind the elk. You make your way back to, I don't know, I recommend like a lakefront suite or something like that. Mm-hmm. You want to blow your loved one's mind. You want to surprise the family. You walk right in, maybe start a fire in the fireplace there in your room. Whoo, baby. Nothing like it.
I want to go on vacation with you.
We should go on
Are you the guy that builds the fire and puts the strawberries covered in chocolate by the tub with the candles and gets everything ready? Could you do that for me?
As you wish. We do have plans to take Real Talk back on the road with real talkers, and we're looking forward to that. But I never want to say too much until the plans are in place, right?
Sure.
Nobody likes that. So we'll just drop these little hints. Right now, the number one thing that we're reminding people about is the Real Talk Golf Classic, which is coming up next Thursday. It's coming up in a week tomorrow, 8 days away. The program's been sent to the printer. The signs are done. Everything's booked, ready to go. All we're missing is your registration. So go to ryanjesperson.com, click on the Connect link, and then the Real Talk Golf Classic. No, the events link on the Real Talk Golf Classic is where you can find it. And Johnny's telling us he's got the best compilation of tunes he's ever put together as Edmonton's best DJ for this golf tournament. What are you kicking off with? How important
I just
is
go off the dome.
How
when I DJ, I just go, and then I'm like, oh, that song next.
I just feel it.
I don't have playlists or anything like that. I just go.
All right.
And I watch the crowds.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredible day.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. That's next Thursday, ryanjesperson.com/events to register your foursome, all in support of the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship. Coming up tomorrow on the show, I'm really looking forward to this. I've been corresponding with Chris Cromwell for a while. She's the founder, she's the host, the producer of the BIPOC Outside podcast. It all started as a a project with a really specific aim and a really specific context, and then she's just broadened it out. And I can't wait to pick her brain on it. Plus, coming up later this week, 2 TV stars with a brand new employee-owned show. We're going to meet them too.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer, Josh Dunford. Technical producer, John Hicks. General manager, Katie Cook-Shivers. Account coordinator, Lawrence Derlego. Human resources, Lena Shepard. Website design, Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is the flagship property of Relay Communications Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.